Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how you doing?
It is starting to feel a little bit like football season. We had our first weekly media call tonight, and it's a little different than a normal year. We were not sitting in the Woody Hayes practice field, but it's like coaches, players, bunch of questions. Everything was about half an hour late. It was like, oh man, this is exactly like a normal year. It was, practice ran long on interview day, you say. Oh, well, now it feels like football season.
Well, exactly. This is what it feels like. And we all got onto the call around, 6 or so, and it got started around 6:30-ish, whatever it was. And like 50 of us just sitting around listening to Tim May tell stories, basically, before we finally got started. And it's different because you ask Jerry Emig, the SID, like, yes, I would like to ask a question. He puts you on a list, and then you just wait to get called on. It's not like sitting around a table and just cutting in front of somebody or yelling over somebody once again, just to make yourself heard. It's like, well, your name will come up, and you hope it's at the same time as the person who is being interviewed that you wanted to ask them a question. And like, because I know there are people who wanted to ask Kerry Combs a question and they weren't part of that mix. So it's kind of a Columbus, Ohio roulette, a Buckeye roulette type of thing, I guess. But it's something. It was better than nothing. It's better than what we've had for a long time. And we still got to learn some stuff that we have been wanting to learn. And Tom, that's where I want to start tonight. First, I'll let you guys know we talked to Kerry Combs, Sevyn Banks, Marcus Williamson. We were supposed to talk to Shaun Wade. He is still on his way back, getting back into things, waiting on some COVID tests, things like that. But it didn't sound like there were any concerns that he wouldn't be part of the team this year. But I want to start the show by talking about the slot cornerback position, which is something we have talked about every single day since about January 2nd or so. And we finally got a little bit of a picture of what it is because we were talking to Marcus Williamson and somebody asked him, hey, it sounds like you're in the slot doing well. Who is there with you? And he's like, yeah, I don't really know. Let me think. Yeah, I think Ronnie Hickman and Cameron Martinez. Like, well, shouldn't you know? First of all, shouldn't you know?
Hypothetically, if you turned around while you're running through drills during practice, who would be the people standing with you there?
But it was good to finally get answers and to know that Sevyn Banks, Cameron Brown, Shaun Wade are all outside. And right now, Marcus Williamson, that seems to be his job. Ronnie Hickman was a guy we've talked about possibly being there because he's a really good athlete, a really smart player, can do the things that kind of Shaun Wade-ish in that he's got safety size and cornerback athleticism. Cameron Martinez, the freshman who Kerry Combs said on signing day he'll start out wide and then move inside as needed or as he proves he can't play outside. I don't know that it was a he can't play outside. It's more of, well, we need somebody else other than Marcus Williamson and Ronnie Hickman. And so that's where we are. And Tom, I think we pretty much, as two of the smartest guys on this podcast, I'd say we pretty much nailed the Marcus Williamson thing.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from tonight was guys are going to be playing pretty much where we thought they were. The three cornerback rotation outside with Banks and Brown and Wade and Williamson inside. I think the one thing that was kind of like, where's Tyreek Johnson going to be? Is he going to be inside? Is he going to be outside? Sounds like he's probably outside. He's probably that fourth guy, maybe outside. But yeah, I think I came away not really, I think everything that I heard today, I went, yeah, that makes sense. That makes, Ronnie Hickman is someone who I could see being, especially if you're not playing a too high safety look. Yeah, absolutely put him in the slot. Cameron Martinez is not a 6'4" kind of player. I think he's 5'10", something like that. And if you've watched his high school highlights, 9 minutes of touchdowns, the legendary 9 minutes of touchdowns from Cameron Martinez, he is quick, he's shifty. Like, that's what you want to be on the slot. You're not, you don't see a lot of 6'6" slot guys. It's a bunch of short, shifty guys. Donovan Peoples-Jones kind of is the sort of the model there, or Garrett Wilson in the inside. That's the kind of guy that Cameron Martinez seems like he'd match up with pretty well. I honestly didn't understand the idea that he would start outside. I mean, I guess it's like, well, if you can do it, sure, do it. But he always seemed like a much more natural fit in the slot to me.
Yeah, especially because he may not be the fastest guy, but he's obviously very quick in confined spaces, which is what you want, which was also what Kerry Combs said makes Marcus Williamson the right guy there, and that it's been an easy transition for him because he is slot receiver sized. He's 5'10", 5'11". So there was just it was something that I guess we've always seen him as the slot corner, even before the slot corner became such a big thing. I remember this is Marcus Williamson's senior season, but he's been around a while, and he's had four different cornerbacks coaches each year of his Buckeyedom, but it's actually a new position coach each year because he's now had Kerry Combs twice, once in 2017 and now once in 2020. But this has been this will be one of those good stories if Marcus Williamson plays as well as he has done this offseason, according to, I don't even remember who we first heard it from, before the fall camp started, but we were hearing some good things about Marcus Williamson. And Kerry Combs said he's had an extraordinary offseason. One of the things I asked him, Marcus Williamson, was, he's had 3 years. First 2 years is injured, played a little bit last year. Now he's the guy because you look behind him and it's pretty likely that he's going to start in the slot. But this is also a free year. It's kind of like a video game free guy. You can do, hey, free guy, I'm just going to go with it. And everybody has a free year this year. And so now, not only is this not his last opportunity, but he can build off of this year to next year, which he said, like, along with getting Kerry Combs back, this has rejuvenated him and given him a whole new purpose, because this isn't his last chance. And, a lot of guys, that can be a lot of pressure for some. It drives them exceedingly well for others. But for Marcus Williamson, it's just things are setting up very well for him to show what he can do. And as Kerry Combs talked about, the NFL is 70% nickel defense anymore. And so slot corners are just as valuable as outside corners, and he's going to get his opportunity to show how good he is, not just this year, but then if he wants to again next year as well.
Yeah, and he's someone who it's such a strange career because it seems like he just got here and we really haven't seen him do anything because he's just kind of been constantly had these nagging injuries and hasn't really been able to get on the field. But he's also been good enough that they haven't redshirted him during any of those years. So he's got this like weird in between where the injuries haven't been serious enough that he's taken a redshirt year, and he was good enough kind of right away that it was like, oh, we want to get this guy in the field. So here you are 3 years into his career, and he basically hasn't made an impact yet. So, and it's not because he's not a good enough player to make an impact. It's because he's had these weird, and he's had a bunch of hamstring stuff and just the dumb crap that can keep you off the field. And so it does feel like there's a little cosmic justice in him getting an extra year of eligibility, because really, at some point, if one of those injuries had happened a little bit earlier, he takes a red shirt during one of those years and he's got 2 more years anyway. So maybe that's just sort of the universe sorting itself out a little bit, that he gets 2 more years. But yeah, absolutely. This is that goes from, this is a tremendously high pressure year for him, where if it doesn't happen this year, it's literally never going to happen, because if you don't have a good year, your 4th year, you're not gonna, you're not getting drafted, and maybe you catch on with some kind of a tryout invitation or something with an NFL team. But if you have 4 years and you haven't played really much in college, that's a tough thing to sell. So yeah, I mean, in terms of his career and his long-term career possibilities on the football field, yeah, that's huge for him to get another year. And I mean, this is a position where Ohio State is not going to turn down any proven good veteran depth at the cornerback position for a while. they've missed out on a couple guys. I mean, we've talked about the impact of losing Jordan Battle, losing Clark Phillips, two guys who flipped real late in the last couple of recruiting cycles. They constantly lose guys early to the NFL. That without Shaun Wade, this would be a dangerous spot, pretty thin unit for the Buckeyes this year. So having Wade back makes it a little more palatable. You can do your 3 cornerback rotation. You can play Williamson in the inside. Getting Williamson back next year, that maybe cushions the blow if Wade and, one of the other outside guys turns pro after this year, which always seems like it's at least a 50-50 possibility.
Yeah, and you touched on the 3-man rotation, and I think that's what this means now with Sevyn Banks, Cameron Brown, and Shaun Wade. And this is what Kerry Combs wanted. And so I guess he's going to get what he wants, defensive coordinator and all that. And it's something that we've become used to. Didn't get to see it last year, even though the top 3 cornerbacks all still played constantly, but with Wade in the slot. Talking to Sevyn Banks, a man of few words today, asking him because he played a little bit last year. So I was asking him, do you feel like you're a veteran now, because he's a junior, so he should. Do you almost feel like a returning starter? And I believe he said I'm good, or I'm cool. Like, all right, okay. Could you expound on that? And really, because of the way these things are
Excuse
set up.
Excuse me, sir. No follow-up questions.
Exactly. So it's like, I'm good. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your.
Good. I've got everything I need. I'm writing a feature. That's all I needed. Thank you. We're good. Too am good.
Thank you. Everybody is good. One of the things he said, just the ups and downs of Shaun Wade is leaving. Now it's just you and Cameron Brown. Shaun Wade is coming back, and he said his mentality didn't change because, quote, I'm just going to do me. And that's what much of what Sevyn Banks had to say is, you just got to ball, you just got to be me, just got to do me, just got to ball. And it's really a mentality that we could all employ and embrace. Don't worry about anybody else, Tom. Do you, go ball, and let everything else fall where it may. But as long as you do you and you go ball, you can't really be unhappy with what happens, because you gave it your all. And, you again, did you, and you balled.
Living life with exclusively in phrases can be fit on bumper stickers really ups the merchandising possibilities. Just as, I'm just saying, think about it. Now, not as a student athlete, that would be an NCAA violation. But later it really ups the merchandising possibilities.
Speaking of the merchandising possibilities, his necklace, the 24/7 necklace.
Yes.
That was pretty nice.
Yes, he had a 24/7 necklace, which he was asked about. And, the obvious question was, so normally you associate that with wide receivers who are open 24/7. I think that was a Chad Ochocinco thing at one point. And so he said that he wore 24 as a kid. That was his jersey number. And his name is Sevyn, so people called him 24/7. So
because he was a wide receiver until
he was a wide receiver.
Year.
Yes. So he was a wide receiver earlier. He's not anymore. He's no longer open 24/7, but he is still apparently known as 24/7.
And he also told whoever mentioned that, is like, don't bring that at me. Like, basically, like, don't even suggest these receivers are open 24/7 at me. And I think he was half serious, half joking, but also serious. And so that was the gist of what Sevyn Banks, Marcus Williamson had to say. I thought it was interesting. Kerry Combs just saying, he prefers to coach from the field and be a hands-on coach, but he learned to become a Zoom coach, and he was able to communicate with players more than ever because, for one, it's all you can do now, and for two, there's no recruiting on the road, so who else you got to talk to? So you do what you can. He said Ryan Day had the staff maximize every available hour and minute they could with the team to get them to be as ready as they are today. And it sounds like, they're fairly ready, although Kerry Combs isn't. He said he's not comfortable enough or not confident enough to say that this group will live up to the BIA, stature. But as always, he also ends every sentence like that every year he's ever been at Ohio State. But I'm confident we'll get there. No worries.
Yeah, he came on and he sits down at the mic. He's got his gaiter on, his mask. He looks like he's about ready to rob a train in 1880 or something. And sits down and just immediately is, how you guys doing? All right. And it was just boy, the energy just went to 11 right away. And it was like, all right, good. It is in fact Kerry Combs under there. Can confirm. Yes. Yeah, he's Kerry Combs will never not be entertaining to me. Kerry Combs will never not be you don't ever zone out during a Kerry Combs press conference. I found it's just there are guys where it's just they'll talk for a while and you're just kind of okay. Oh, let's see. I got to check this on my computer. Kerry Combs has my attention the entire time. Kerry Combs is up at the podium, and he has. I did a podcast for tomorrow morning. The morning script for tomorrow morning is Alex Gleitman, who's coming on to preview the Ohio State offense. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the Ohio State offense is going to be pretty darn good. And there's going to be points aplenty there. The Ohio State defense is a little bit more of a question mark this year. And one of the reasons the Ohio State defense is a little bit more of a question mark is, number one, Kerry Combs has never called the defense before. And number two, the cornerbacks are a little bit of a question mark. You lose Jeff Okudah, you lose Damon Arnett. You have some questions. Like that's going to happen. You lose Jordan Fuller. That you have some question marks in the back end of that defense. So I wouldn't expect Kerry Combs to have all the answers right now and feel like everything is great, because it shouldn't be great this time of year with this many questions and with all the stuff that they've gone through. But I have no doubt whatsoever that they have in fact maximized every possible minute, and that Ohio State has been. Ohio State, you saw there was basically no one on the planet that wanted to play football this fall more than Ohio State. And I have no doubt that has manifested itself on the practice field, in the weight room, in meeting rooms, on Zoom calls, and everywhere else. And however prepared the rest of the Big Ten is for this season, I would say Ohio State is probably going to be as prepared or more prepared than anyone else in that league. And when you also have the talent advantage that Ohio State has, you're shaping up for a pretty good year. There are still questions to be answered. There's still stuff they've got to sort out in fall camp, but I don't have much doubt that Kerry Combs does in fact think that they will be okay when all is said and done.
Yeah, and the way it worked out, because we didn't get a chance to ask him about how much of the one high safety will there still be. Didn't get to ask him about calling plays, which there's only so many questions you can ask in 8 or 9 minutes that we had with him. And so only a handful of people got to actually talk to him about it. So there's still plenty of stuff to be answered. Tom, pads have not yet gone on yet. So there will be more information that we glean moving forward as well. Combs was asked what does it take to start at corner at Ohio State. Said he needs a gritty competitor, a kid who refuses to lose, has to be fearless, but more than anything, a mentally tough guy who has the confidence that his guy will not get open. And as he's talking about the gritty competitor, refuse to lose, I'm going through my head and thinking about Marcus Williamson and just the way he's been able to overcome and just not give up. Because year 4 for an Ohio State cornerback, and you haven't really gotten on the field, you're not going to get on the field. Generally, you're done. You've been passed by. You've been recruited over. You are now probably at Bowling Green or Temple, or you've transferred out somewhere, Virginia Tech, Michigan, lesser programs, and that's what you've done. And now he stuck it out, and that takes grit, that takes determination, that takes one of the very valuable things that corners all need, and that's a lack of a memory. So it's like, what do you mean last 3 years? I don't remember that. I know I'm the number 1 slot corner right now. That's all I know. And so you got the short memory there. And I think he's one of those guys that is easy to root for this year. Combs was asked, anybody jumping out at you now? And his answer was no. So, Tom, go ahead.
I assume that was in like a scary Halloween funhouse kind of way. No, I'm just sitting here. No.
Can't do that. Socially distanced.
Yeah. And to a certain degree, I get it because they haven't put pads on yet. There's still no spider pads. They cannot put the pads on until after they get all that testing stuff in, the daily rapid testing, which is September 30th, which is why all this stuff is, being put off till this October 24th to start the season. But at the same time, like, they've been able to do enough 7-on-7 stuff that cornerbacks, cornerbacks should have a better sense of things than, like, I would completely understand if Stud got asked, like, who's standing out as an offensive lineman? It's like, I don't know. They've been hitting pads. Like, they haven't been hitting people. Like, that makes sense to me. From a quarterback perspective, like, yeah, I mean, he may not want to gas anyone up this early in camp. I mean, it is still relatively early. You still have plenty of practices ahead, and I think we have a decent sense for who is probably going to be on that depth chart at the top of the, on that top line of the depth chart as they're rolling out for that first week. But I mean, it didn't sound like either of the freshmen were, like really about ready to be like major impact players. Which, again, they had 3 practices in the spring and a couple more in August, and then they are functionally, even the early enrollees are functionally not early enrollees this year. So I do wonder if it's just not realistic to expect any of those true freshmen to be, significant contributors, at least for the first half of the year.
And interestingly, they still want to build depth, so they're still going to try to play as many guys as they can. But you might not want to do that while the games are still on the line. I don't expect much from really the freshmen. But one thing he did say was, like, yeah, no, nobody's jumping out. All of the names. Like, who we have, basically. And it's the people we've talked to. Tyreek Johnson was asked about, but of course, in this roulette, the person doing the Tyreek Johnson story, because somebody clearly was, they only got to ask Marcus Williamson and Sevyn Banks about him, and so you only got so much of an answer. He didn't. Who was the guy doing the story? Didn't get a chance to ask Kerry Combs. There wasn't a whole lot of like, oh yeah, like Tyreek Johnson, he's going to play this year type of stuff from those guys. But I also don't know that they normally would do that anyway, because they're so focused on themselves. As you mentioned, Marcus Williamson had to think about who was behind him, so it's like people are, when it's this competitive, if you're, looking at everybody else, you're probably doing it from behind. And when you're looking ahead and you're leading the pack, you don't always know what's going on back there. And so maybe that's what's going on there. The move to Kerry Combs talked about the multiple personnel groupings on defense that is big in the NFL and seems like it's going to be coming to college football more, and specifically to Ohio State, is interesting because the multiple personnel groupings has always been part of the offense. With we got 2 tight end package, we've got 4 receiver package, we got 2 tailback package. Not at Ohio State, but all of these different things. And then so now things are becoming so specialized. We've talked about this for a few years now, where you've got different defensive packages that come in. To me, that means, and it didn't really click with me until Ross Fulton and I were talking about this on the forum. If you've got 3 corners outside rotating and only 1 slot corner who isn't rotating, this multiple personnel groupings on defense tells me that there will maybe be more 2 safety looks, as that second safety then is the guy who rotates with the slot corner. And so it depends on who you're playing, depends on who's healthy, it depends on the ability of these players. But this may be a movement not necessarily away from the 1 high, but just an inclusion of more 2 high.
And that's interesting because I don't think I didn't hear anyone ask specifically about the 1 high look, right? I didn't
Nope.
miss that. No, yeah, there was. I was sort of waiting for someone to ask Combs about that, and put on your defensive coordinator hat, and he really didn't do that much. And that's interesting because this was not safety talk. This was specifically cornerbacks, our interviews today. So at some point, I'm going to be interested to hear who, I think Ronnie Hickman is one of the names that we would have thought would have been towards the top of the list to be the other guy if there are two safeties next to Josh Proctor. So if it's not Ronnie Hickman and he really is in the, a slot guy, who is that second guy up high with Josh Proctor? Because Josh Proctor is very clearly, if there's a one high, it's Josh Proctor. He's the guy at the top of the depth chart. After that, it's like,
Marcus Hooker.
Marcus Hooker is the guy that I think you and I came away from the first practice of the spring thinking might be that guy. Court Williams in that bullet position. I mean, maybe this is the year. Stop me if you've heard this before, and let me spoil it for you. You've heard this before. Maybe this is the year the bullet really takes off and it becomes a major part of the defense. And obviously they like Court Williams a lot, and he was the first guy in the defense to lose his black stripe. And we have been saying since he was in high school, like, hey, this is a guy who could be a pretty quick impact player at bullet. But what does that look like this year? Is that does Pete Werner negate that, or does whoever is playing Sam this year negate that position, and it doesn't really and it's still a non-factor? We don't know. We haven't talked to the linebackers yet. We haven't talked to the safeties yet. But yeah, that's certainly one of the mysteries. I feel more confident now that we had a very good grasp on what was going to happen at corner. I'm not super confident about what's going on at safety and whether it's a one high or two high look there.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've mentioned this before. Matt Barnes is now listed as the safeties coach. Last year, I think he was mainly the slot corner, from what I remember talking to players about. He was the guy that handled the slot corner position. But now it looks like Kerry Combs is taking over the corners. Matt Barnes will be with the safeties. And, if it's Court Williams as that second safety, I think that would be amazing and just speak volumes that, this kid has already come in and done something, because we know they think highly of him. He's more of a strong safety than a free safety, so maybe that works out as well, where he doesn't have to be that last line of defense necessarily, and he can have a little bit of help back there. And I would see I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if he's out there some in some form or fashion. And that will be fun to watch. Shaun Wade, we don't really need to talk too much about him, because Kerry Combs can, he can talk about him for days. Basically, he loves Shaun Wade. Talk about him enough for all of us. And I thought it was interesting. He said, when you recruit players and they ask you to treat you like your son, like treat you like they're your son, he said that's a very special thing that he takes very seriously. And when he talked to Shaun Wade last week or whatever, about staying or leaving, he gave him his honest thoughts and said, I'll love you either way. And of course, he eventually stayed. And I think Kerry Combs said partly because that he's saying happy birthday to Shaun Wade on his birthday, the day before he announced he was going to come back. So very good job. Kerry Combs is a heck of a recruiter. I didn't know he must be a heck of a singer too. Now we know, although I would have suspected it. I don't know about you.
I don't know about the quality of his singing, but I can say, without having heard him sing, I have a pretty good sense for the volume of his singing, and I think the enthusiasm level is probably a good solid 11.5 out of 10. So
yeah. He's one of those guys at karaoke that has no shame, and he'll just go for it. He'll sing both parts of the duet and Islands in the Stream. Like, he don't care. He'll sing it to himself.
Yeah, I don't think he does anything without a pretty high level of enthusiasm. And for Shaun Wade, that seems like that's probably. I'm sure Kerry Combs didn't want to make it seem like, well, yes, of course he wanted to come back and play for me. But, if you were to prepare yourself for being an NFL corner and you were to benefit from a year of having film of playing on the outside and to potentially boost your draft stock, there are probably worse people to play for than a guy who literally spent the last few years coaching, guess what, NFL corners. Seems like it might be relevant experience. So I'm sure that probably didn't hurt Kerry Combs' case to have Wade come back.
Yeah, definitely not. As he wrapped up, Combs was asked about Haskell Garrett, who suffered a gunshot wound to his face a few weeks back now. Seems like forever ago, but I'm sure it doesn't for Haskell Garrett, who is still dealing with the recovery aspects of that. He said, Combs said, I would have thought the season would have been over, his career over, and he doesn't think that's true. He said he's probably closer to playing than most people would think. And I know you and I have talked about this. I don't think we ever really considered him like lost for the season, because I guess I didn't think about everything that would be involved in getting shot in the face, and not to make light of it, but it's like, well, he was out of the hospital in 2 days. He was back at the facility soon after. And I guess if you're just thinking it just goes through one cheek and then the other, and he's fine. But yeah, there's also, your jaw, teeth, tongue, all of that in there that has to, you have to miss as well. And so there is all of that, not to mention the whole mental aspect of it. But it was good to hear that there's possibility, good chance it seems that he will play this year. How soon, we don't know. But I hadn't even considered really that he might be out.
Yeah, and you hear through and through, shot in the face, went through cheeks. You think, okay, cheeks. So you sew up the cheeks and you have a little scar and that's it, right? But
you watch too much TV.
Yeah, turns out there is some stuff between your cheeks. That is a thing that people do have in their heads. And yeah, I think he said something about dental. So I mean, probably some teeth and whatever else. And he did not want to go into a ton of specifics, but I definitely came away from that thinking that it was more encouraging news than it certainly could have been. That he's, the prognosis is that he should be able to return to the field at some point, and he like Marcus Williamson will have another year. He's got, he this year doesn't count for anyone, so if he has to sit out this whole year, he can come back next year, and that's fine. And he is certainly someone that Ohio State was counting on initially for some depth on the inside of that defensive line, but if he's not available to play, it sounds like he could be back next year, and that would be whenever he's back on the field, that's going to be good news for the Buckeyes and good news for him as well.
Yeah. Anything else from today, Tom, that you wanted to touch on before we get to our question?
No, I think that was kind of the big stuff. I mean, I came away from that thinking that we have a pretty good grasp on the cornerback situation. I think looking forward to. I know we're getting Kevin Wilson on Friday, right, this week. So
yeah,
we'll get a little offensive coordinator talk. Kevin Wilson is always. There are a lot of people for whom Kevin Wilson is one of the favorite interviews because Kevin Wilson likes to talk, and Kevin Wilson will give you some like real straight answers, which is fun. So I'm looking forward to that. So we'll get to talk to Kevin Wilson and some other offensive players. I don't know if that'll be
tight ends.
Tight ends, probably.
I'm guessing.
Might be tight ends. So Friday, as soon as Friday, we could have the answer to the question: is this the year of the tight end?
I think there's a pretty good shot, Tom, and I know it's one of Kevin Wilson's favorite topics about because the only way to measure a tight end is by catches. And so I'm sure he's going to be thrilled to talk about that this year. And especially, Tom, when you are playing 3 or 4 different tight ends, it's easy for all of them to just build up a number of touches and look like they're really productive. And so that's going to be great.
Especially when you don't have a lot of wide receivers to throw the ball to, as Ohio State does this year. So
yeah, and Kerry Combs also is very high on those Ohio State wide receivers. He called them, I believe, the best in America, as well as. Did he say they were the best in America, but he wouldn't say the same thing about his own corners? Is that?
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was quite ready to, say that they were ready to. The defensive backs were ready to assume that mantle just yet. They hadn't quite earned that yet, but he sounded hopeful that they would get there by the end of the year. But
I did like the fact that, hey, how did that whole best in America thing came out? And he's like, well, I want whatever we do to be the best in the world, but they really only play football in America, so. Let's just be the best in America, and that should suffice because America is the best in the world at football. So if you're that's the whole thing. Like if you beat Michigan, you're probably going to win the Big Ten, or if you win the Big Ten, you're probably going to go to the playoffs. If you're the best in America at being the defensive backs, you're probably the best in the world. So we didn't need to be too crazy about being the best in the world. And of course, it seems to be working. Tom, go ahead.
The Montreal Alouettes would like a word, sir. Sir. We have one question from Alex. Do you guys have a favorite Cincinnati local food, i.e. Skyline, La Rosa's, Graders, UDF, Grippos, etc.?
Oh, UDF is also Columbus. I mean,
I don't know where UDF started. I was wondering about that. Because I know a lot of those.
Trust him. That it's. I've never been to Graders because I abhor expensive ice cream.
Graders is not expensive ice cream.
I just assume it is because it's a standalone ice cream shop. I've never been because any place that is also a factory. Now you're talking like even more expensive, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing says super fancy like factory. Yeah, that's
Spaghetti Warehouse.
All right. I stand corrected. Yes. Yeah, I have always been partial to Graders. We do not have a Graders out. I live out in Licking County now, about 30 miles east of Columbus. We do not have a Graders out here. So I've been off of Graders for a little while, but yeah, I will, when we're in Columbus, I will get Graders. The raspberry chip ice cream, still very, very good. I have never had La Rosa's pizza. I'm friends with someone from Cincinnati who, will tell you where he went to high school within the first 30 seconds of every conversation.
Moeller.
And speaks very highly of La Rosa's. I have not had La Rosa's. I have not had Grippos. Skyline is
yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about Graders. And yeah, Gold Star chili, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, I have of all of those things that are in Columbus, Graders is the one I have been to most recently. UDF is good. We just were talking about UDF. My wife was my daughter was very excited because she found out they made ice cream like right there in the convenience store, and it was like, oh, is it like incredible? I was like, I mean, the one at 12th and High was not remarkable, but I mean, a lot of the things at 12th and High in the late 1990s were not super remarkable.
I have a one hitter in my chocolate shake. How did this get here?
There was a Blockbuster there right across the street that was in like an old house that you had to walk upstairs into a house, and it was somehow a Blockbuster Video as well. Yeah, there was a lot there actually. Come to think of it, there may have been a reason some of that area was redeveloped.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
I do like a UDF milkshake. I do not like waiting for them because that I don't know if there's any fast moving UDFs in Columbus where. And then I also feel bad. It's like there's 15 people in there buying smokes and beers. And I'm like, can I just get you over here for a chocolate shake? It'll only be 10 minutes. Because it's like a scoop, run it in the whir thing, the drill thing, and more scoop, there's some chocolate. And then the line is just getting longer and longer. And the person doing the milkshake is not even quiet about how much they hate you, they hate this. And so I haven't been there for a while to get a milkshake. Grippos, chips are chips. Montgomery Inn, when the Buckeyes had a spring game in Cincinnati, we stopped there and just, had a feast. Like, give us your big plate of meat, individual plates of meat, and we hammered that. As a kid, I grew up on Wiedemann's beer, little fat little brown bottles out of Cincinnati. That I believe only blinded 12% of their customers, allegedly. So, that's about all for Cincinnati. I've had Skyline twice in my life because the first time wasn't all that great. And the second time I was probably drunk, and it probably wasn't all that great again because I don't really remember it.
Well, if you were drunk and you don't remember it, that's probably Skyline's fault.
But also, maybe a blessing in disguise. Anything else, Tom, before we call it a night?
I think we're ready to wrap up. We have this is an actual, legitimate, honest to goodness college football game week. So we are going to have for our Patreon subscribers, we will be back in our regular season mode now that the SEC is playing. And so you've got kind of the majority of the Power Five playing. We will do our Patreon exclusive weekly game National College Football Preview show that will drop a little later on this week. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon subscriber, you can do that at patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly. We have not really been plugging that a lot during the off season, but now that the season's here, we end up doing a whole lot more. I think we promise one show a month for Patreon. And as soon as college football season kicks off, and it really is kind of kicking off in earnest this weekend, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're doing a Patreon show every week. So under promise and over deliver. Now that we're able to do that, we're going to start plugging Patreon again. So patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly. You can join for just a couple bucks a month, and you get an extra episode of the podcast pretty much every week during college football season. And then plenty of fun additional benefits as well. This episode, for example, we're doing live. We're taping it live, and Buckeye Weekly Patreon members are here watching that live, and also BuckeyeScoop.com members are watching that live. You get that link whether you're a Buckeye Scoop member or a Buckeye Weekly Patreon member. So either way, you get some kind of cool additional benefits.
You did a great job, Tom. It's like you do this at the end of every morning scoop type podcast, where it's, I just could give you the rundown of everything that you can get, that you're missing, that you haven't gotten yet. And it's great because then I don't have to do it, because when I do it, it's not very good.
Hey, speaking of the morning scoop, well,
that's enough time for today, Tom.
Now this is the point where I have to remember what day it is and then what day tomorrow is. Okay, well, tomorrow's Wednesday. So on Wednesday morning scoop, I have Alex Gleitman from BuckeyeScoop.com on. He just wrote about a kind of position by position preview of the Ohio State offense, and I looked at that and I thought, hey, the Ohio State offense can be pretty fun to talk about this year. Why don't we do a show with Alex where we just preview kind of position by position the Ohio State offense and talk about the fact that, hey, this might be, remember all those great offenses in Ohio State's past? Well, friends, you might see the best one in school history this fall. So
2011.
Yeah.
2004.
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah,
2001.
Yeah.
Better than those?
Yeah. I can comfortably say yes. Frankly, even if there wasn't a season, I would probably still have said yes. Yes. So that was a fun conversation with Alex. This is very time travel-y because in that show I reference this show and the fact that we dropped a new episode of Buckeye Weekly the night before, but really I recorded that one before this one. So I told you we definitely have to record the Buckeye Weekly on Thursday night because I've promised everyone in a show that hasn't released yet. So yeah, so that's all still to come. Still to come for you, but for us, it's already happened. So welcome to the future. It's all on the morning scoop.
I'm blown away. All right, let's wrap it up because I'm now confused about if we're starting, we're ending, or going backwards. Thank you all for listening. I hope you followed along even until the end, which is also now the beginning. So thank you, and we will talk to you guys later.